Welcome back to Tiny Grimes Games. I'm here with another Star Wars Destiny video. And it feels like just yesterday we were doing spoilers for Empire at War, and then the new two-player set. This is a CCG. There's always a spoiler for something, and we got all kinds of new cards from Legacies. The new set that's coming out is going to be the new core set, I guess, with the starters. And we got some really interesting cards in this. Let's go ahead and take a look at what was spoiled. I think it was late last week. So we'll start with the Veteran Stormtrooper. Veteran Stormtrooper is weird because the whole reason that the basic Stormtrooper is awesome is because he only costs 7. This dude still has 2 blanks. He still has 3 damage sides like the other one. This one has a 3 side, but it is indirect damage. And it costs 9, but he has 9 health, which is more. I just feel like the whole reason the other Stormtrooper is awesome is because he's 7 cost. This one at 9, it just seems like there's a lot of better choices at 9. It's going to be interesting, though. A 1, 2, and a 3 is pretty heavy duty. So I think it's really going to depend on, like, how impactful is this indirect damage side that we're seeing here, the little grenade. If it's really impactful, then I think he's going to be great. But it's just this really weird side of, like, it's hard to focus down guys with indirect damage. It ends up getting spread out a lot. It's one of the reasons why sometimes Palpatine has a hard time winning, because it can't actually kill anybody, and it just kind of whittles everyone down before he dies. So I'm interested to see how it works out. I tend to think this Stormtrooper is probably not going to see a ton of play. I like that it has big numbers, though. I like that they're making Stormtroopers solid. And I think it's fine to have 3 damage sides and 2 blanks. Like that, the 2 blanks isn't what worries me. It's just the 9 cost starts you getting into real competition for slots, especially the more cards we have. Boba Fett, super exciting to have Boba Fett, right? Like everyone loves Boba Fett. 12-16 is a lot. We're looking at Jango Veer's kind of territory. Jango Fett. We're looking at almost Cad Bane territory, almost new Anakin. New Kylo, a lot of competition, and then you have, of course, new Phasma lurking around at only 10-13, 9's at 10-13, so 12-16 has recently been a troublesome spot, so let's take a look at him. He's got 3 damage sides, the last one being a really interesting special, deal damage to a character equal to the value showing on any die. That's interesting, but what does that mean? It feels like to me that's another 2, which is still pretty good. 3 2 sides, but is that good enough is really the question. He doesn't, like, Anakin has, 4 damage sides, and those are really scary. New Kylo has his ability, which automatically does 2 quite a bit, and then has, 2 or 3 more damage sides? Jeez, I can't remember. The new Phasma has 3 straight up damage sides. I feel like this guy probably won't see a ton of play. The 11 health is good, but 12-16 is a rough number, and he doesn't have a really cool ability. And what I mean by that is like a cheater kind of ability or something crazy. Like it seems like everyone now has crazy abilities, like Cad Bane cheats out damage. Jango Fett, for the same price point, is cheating out his damage. 9's is cheating out his damage. Phasma just costs way less to be a basic die. I just feel like Boba, while his sides are good, in a game where characters need to have really awesome abilities and be fast, and be able to, what I mean by fast is be able to cheat out damage so it can't be mitigated. It just seems like Boba is a step behind that. Like he's good. He's real good, but is he going to be great? And that's really what you have to be now. We're going to be 4.5 sets in with the 2-player box. 4.5 sets in, you better be awesome to be picked. And I don't think he's awesome. I think he's solid. I think he's good. I just don't think he's going to see a ton of play. All right. Dr. Aphra is really interesting to me. At only 11-14, it lets you pair her with the Boba Fetts of the world, the Jango Fetts of the world. Though 12-16, like this 12-16 plus 14 for Dice Elite hasn't really worked out that well. So let's take a look at Aphra. She's a little bit weird, 10 health, which is cool. Her sides are not great. The The 2 range for $1 is not awesome. It's okay. And the 2 indirect is the same kind of problem we already talked about with, I don't know, it's indirect doesn't feel like 2 damage to me. It feels more like 1 and then an extra. And then, I don't know, does she go into mill deck? If not, the mill side's kind of pointless. The $1's good, and the 2 shields is actually great. Let's take a look at her ability. The cost of the first droid you play each round is decreased by 1. After you deal indirect damage to yourself, you may draw a card. So we'll see this having more value as we look at one of the droids that's coming. But I don't know. I feel like she doesn't do quite enough for 11-14. I still think I'd rather have Jabba in that slot. Reducing the cost of a droid, I don't know. If she was Hero, I'd be more excited, right? They've got BB-8. They've got an overcosted R2. They've got C-3PO. They now have Chopper. They have all kinds of choices. What are we working with, Dr. Aphra? We're working with BT, and I think that's the guy who was spoiled. I don't know. Whatever droid that is. I can't remember. I can never keep her droids straight. But her droids, and then the droid die that comes with the Seventh Sister. That I don't know. This is like, I don't know. It feels like there's not enough impact. And again, remember, this is not that she's a bad card. It's 4 sets in. She's got to be awesome. I don't think Aphra's awesome. I think she's pretty cool, though. All right, BT1, he's pretty cool. For a droid, dude has 4 damage sides, and after you activate him, deal an indirect damage to yourself and 1 to your opponent. I really like him a lot. 2's a lot. So that's kind of the sticky point. If he was 1, he would be wow. So he's really good. And I think he fits into this archetype I was talking about with Empire at War that so far hasn't come to fruition, which is this direct damage deck where you just say, I'm just doing piles of damage. I'm using hate. I'm using deadly. I have this new mechanic, indirect damage, just piling on damage willy-nilly. He fits that very well. And I'll be really interested to see if 2 is just too much for him. He looks really good, though, in that kind of archetype. But again, will that archetype even be good? A lot of his value comes down to, is 1 indirect damage basically worthless? I don't know. I'm a little bit worried. Like, there's a lot of decks, especially hero variants, that run shields. And yeah, stuff like Vibro Knife gets around it, but indirect really doesn't. Indirect is just like, hey, I was going to get by your shields anyway, and now you're taking my indirect damage and using it on the shield. So it was basically like I rolled a blank. That worries me a bit with indirect damage. So I feel like BT is really reliant on how good is indirect damage. But he's certainly a cool card theoretically. All right, Luke is something to get real excited about. So this is why I love Luke so much. He functions as a cheap 2-die support character that is not great early game, but becomes amazing late game. And so this is what I mean by that. So late game, let's say Qui-Gon was 16. Let's say any number of hero characters were 16. You would be able to pair Luke with a really good elite character. So you could have 2 elite characters. Qui-Gon is the early target, right? They end up killing him. The late game moves to Luke, who has these dice that aren't that great, but now he already has an upgrade on him. Now it's late game, so you have less things you have to do with your resources. Plus, just spending 2 to do 4 damage might close out the game. So the point is, Luke functions, I think, really similarly to like a Tusken Raider, in that, like with Vader Raider, once Vader dies, the Raider was still able to close out the game. And I feel like that's the role Luke is playing with this ability to just roll a 1, spend the 2, which you would not want to do every turn. That's just too cost prohibitive. But if it's a closer, it works really well. Now, having said all that, this is reliant on there being a 16 cost good elite character. Heroes doesn't have this yet. They have things like Leia, which is fine. Elite Chewbacca, which is fine. Chirrut, which is not fine. So we'll see what ends up being available. And if something really good comes out at 16 elite, I think Luke becomes a major player in the meta and really turns Hero from what's basically been the junk pile to really good. Like, Luke alone could turn this around by playing this amazing role. So I'm really hoping there's an awesome 16-point elite character, and that Luke basically is what he is in the movies, right? Saving the heroes. That would be amazing. He looks really good with an awesome 16 elite character. Now, if there isn't one, his value drops a lot. Actually, at 11, it's still not bad as a closer, right? He ends up being, let's say you're in a 3-character deck. He's the last guy left. He's pretty good. The problem is, in that kind of deck where you don't have somebody really scary with him, I think they just kill Luke first, and that takes away a lot of the value of him. I don't think turn 1 you want to go, roll Luke, roll the 1, spend 2, boom, did 3, but used all my resources to just add 2 damage. I don't think that's going to be worth it. So I really think he needs to be paired with a good elite 16 cost character. So fingers crossed. Let's make it happen, FFG. Good 16 cost guy. Obi-Wan. I mean, it's another one of these super expensive heroes. I don't know. Like, we have so many 15, 19, 16, 20 kind of dudes that I don't even know what to do with them anymore. They all look the same to me. They all look identical. Okay, this guy does something different. Cool. He has 2 3 sides. That's cool, but he only has 2 damage sides. He's got a couple of shield sides. He has a cool shield ability. I am not sold on him. Like, you just tell me 15, 19 hero, and I'm automatically moving on. Automatically rolling my eyes. Because you know what he's not as good as? He's not going to be as good as 13, 17 Kylo. He's not going to be as good as 13, 17 Anakin. Those characters are so pushed that a 15, 19 is just not going to do it unless they're bonkers, and he's not bonkers. He's just good. He's good. I like him. I love Obi-Wan, but he's not going to see a lot of play. All right. Obi-Wan's lightsaber. Here's the issue with Obi-Wan's lightsaber. 3 costs, no redeploy. We talked about that in all our Empire at War reviews. If you're 3 cost, you better have redeploy unless you are busted. Like rocket launcher going on an FN and just doing 4 damage. That's pretty busted. Let's take a look at this. Dice sides, not busted at all. Kind of bad, actually. But what does the special do? Give attached character 1 shield, deal unblockable damage to a character equal to the number of shields on attached character. That's pretty good, actually. I think at 3 cost, though, this needs to have 2 specials. I really think for this weapon to work, one of those shields had to be a special. There had to be like 4 damage sides. Or get rid of maybe the +3 and make it another special. I just don't think this card is viable. I think it's cool. I really like it, actually. I think it's an awesome card that is not viable because it doesn't have redeploy. I mean, it's just really tough to do this. Also, as soon as your opponent plays this, then you just remove their shields. And now they are looking at 1 unblockable damage for their special. I just don't. I don't see it. Again, I'd love to be wrong. I just don't see that one seeing play. It's another cool concept, though. We're seeing a lot of cool concepts that may not see play. Wedge. Oh, it's cool to see Wedge. 11-15, so he's reasonably costed. The problem is, remember how I said 14 was rough for heroes? 15 is super rough. There's not a lot to go with that. I mean, you could go Elite Wedge, Elite Luke. I don't think so. His power action is cool. Turn 1 of your vehicle dice to any side. That's great. We get to do that in a vehicle deck. But the problem is, does he go in a vehicle deck? Maybe as a 1 die, and then you have actual dudes that make a vehicle deck function. Like, he doesn't make money. I don't know, he just doesn't feel like a vehicle deck card. He has an indirect side and then a +3 indirect side, which currently is the worst side in the game by a long stretch. Like, you have to really build around that, right? Because it's a +3 indirect, so it has to be paired with an indirect. There aren't that many indirect guys yet. I really feel like Wedge is going to be entirely unplayable for now, unless there's some character that's like 15 and is also mostly indirect sides. And then you're running the indirect damage deck and just praying that it works out. I don't think Wedge is going to see play. I don't think he's viable yet. But he's another interesting design, which I like. Resistance Bomber. This thing's scary. This thing is real scary. It's 3 cost. And yeah, you're probably only going to get 3 usages out of it. But guess what? The game goes so fast, that's fine. If you could do 18 damage with this thing, you'd be like, you know what? That's fine. I only got 18 damage before it went away. I'll be all right. I think Resistance Bomber is going to see play. I think there's going to be a deck actually built around Resistance Bomber. For when you can, for 3 cost, get out a die that has a freaking 6 on it, it's going to see some play. I'm just going to call that now. I have no idea what kind of deck it's going to see play in, but 6 indirect is pretty dang solid. I'm a little scared of this card, to be honest. Hopefully, supports have been sort of unplayable and too slow, and even Empire at War, where they were like, we are making supports viable. People are like, kind of. You also made this 2-player set with tons of broken aggro stuff, so not really viable. But if we can find a way to make it viable, this will have a huge role in it and be really good. I'm kind of scared of the power level of that card. All right, Han, the Savvy Smuggler. He's got basically the Jabba ability. After you activate this character, you may re-roll a die, only a more flexible version of Jabba. Okay, that's cool. I like that. His damage sides are not great. He's got 2 2s, which is cool, but 1 costs $1, so that's kind of rough. He does have 2 potential resource sides, which is good, and he's got that 1 discard side. I feel like he's a very... Just like what I've been saying, like, he's good, he's solid, but we're 4.5 sets in. We don't have anyone currently that goes with him. Even if we did, it'd probably be better to go with Luke. I feel like having him compete directly with Luke, he loses. And he loses by a wide margin. So I'm not sure anyone will play this card, to be honest. It's a cool card. I like it. I just don't see it seeing a lot of play. Delve. This is a really weird one. Deal 1 indirect damage to yourself, to player support or upgrade from your hand for free, but it costs 3. So for 3 and a damage, your hand has to look something like this to make this even remotely viable, right? Like, I have, and so it's villain, so like, I have an ATSD in hand and a Delve in hand at the same time. Boom, save myself a bunch of resources, major impact. So if you can find a way to have that dream scenario regularly, this card might be really good. But we've seen supports have sort of struggled. The meta's really fast. And it's like if you're already building that support deck, you've probably found an engine that pays for it. Do you need Delve in there to hope you get with a big enough card? Like, a lot of the supports cost 3 already. A couple cost 4. I don't think it's worth it to have this card in your deck if you're only going to save $1, maybe. It's really only worth it for that big hit. I don't know. I just feel like Delve is not going to be a card that sees play, even though it's a cool card and should, in theory, be good. It's that opportunity cost of having to put it in your deck and then having to draw it at the right time. All right, the Bubble Shield. 1 cost support. You may distribute indirect damage to support as if it were a character with 3 health. Discard it if it has 3 or more damage on it. It's a neat idea, right? It's like a little shield you just drop down and it soaks up 3. So this is a meta card for sure. If everyone runs indirect damage, this card's pretty solid. 1 for 3 health is not bad. I mean, we played Field Medic, 1 for 2 health. That's a little more specific, though. It saves a direct guy. I could see this seeing play if indirect becomes good. I think probably not in Legacies because there's just not that many indirect damage stuff. It's new. But in the future, I think Bubble Shield will see play. All right, now we're on to the cool stuff. I mean, plots? Really? Already? I called this a long time ago when the game first dropped. I said, I've played Imperial Assault quite a bit. I've seen X-Wing. I know what's coming, right? they always do this thing where they have like build points and it's awkward and you're at 28 and you feel like you wasted 2. Well, guess what? Here's a card you can just include in your deck that costs 1. So we are there, and Espionage is not that exciting. After setup, discard the top card from each deck. Even in a mill deck that's at 29, I don't know if this is a good card, right? It's even then you're like, well, I have to randomly drop one of mine also. So if I have some utterly critical card in there, that's kind of scary. Now, if your deck doesn't run anything critical, then maybe less so. Where this could be really good is in a couple spots. If there's a meta that develops where there's a deck that has to have a card, like it just has to, then this card is decent because maybe it gives you a shot at knocking it off and discarding it. It also could be really good in some sort of deck that has recursion, right? Whether that is a deck that's running cheat, whether that's jeez, what is the card? The blue card that costs 1 that lets you get blue events from your discard pile, or something even better. I think Espionage will be great then. With the current cards we have, it looks like Espionage is not great, but it's exciting. Just the plot mechanic itself is very, very exciting to me. And Profitable Connection is an actual exciting plot. If it didn't cost 3, this thing would be insane. You start the game with 1 additional resource. That doesn't sound like much, but in a game where you're going to get 2 a turn and you only start with 2, you are starting with a third more resources, which is huge, especially since 2-cost weapons tend to be 3-cost weapons tend to be, holy moly, that weapon is freaking amazing. So you can basically start the game with a 3-cost weapon before you've activated anyone. Boom, I put my Riot Baton down with redeployed, mind you. Get to play it immediately, roll it, and I'm off going. That is super strong. Now it costs 3. All right, so that's a real kicker. How many decks are going to build themselves around this becomes the question. A lot of our best decks that would want an early weapon and really aggro, they're at 30 exactly. So it'd be a big sacrifice for something like New Kylo FN, which are both elite. You could have this card by making FN not be elite. So is it worth 1 resource for a die? I don't know. It might be in that deck. It might just be worth it to be able to just go, first play of the game, boom, 3-cost weapon, overwrite. Maybe that makes that viable. Where it's certainly viable is if for some reason you build a 27-point deck, which I can't name a deck that's 27 points, so that doesn't sound that reasonable. But this is a cool card, and more than anything, this gives us an indication of what we can expect from plots, which is really anything. Like, I have to imagine there's plots that are going to do the following, like start with an extra health on a character, start with a shield, extra shield. We could do cool stuff that are like plot attached as an upgrade to a character, so it takes an upgrade slot away from a character but does something really cool. I'd love to see something that says like start the game with a weapon, or better yet, start the game with a support 3 or less or 4 or less or something. A way that would be really cool to me as a way to offset the cost. You could say like cost 6, but you can start with any support 4 or less. So basically, instead of a whole cruddy character, I can start with a slave 1 that's basically acting in the role of a character. And I think that's really neat to be able to have that option. I'm not saying that will be good, but I'm saying that would be a really cool option to have. And I'm really, really excited to see what plots they have in Legacies. And what's cool is that my guess would be something like, let's see how these work out and not go insane with them. And a couple sets down the lines when we'll really start to see them push the envelope. But either way, it's an exciting direction. All right, well, that's all I've got this week. That's all for Star Wars Destiny Legacies. Looks to be a pretty interesting set. Will Luke save heroes? That's really, to me, the number one burning question. Will this Luke card save heroes? Man, I hope the answer is yes. I'll see you next time on Tiny Grimes Games.